2023 is going to come down to one thing. That's going to be the discipline to do what's required.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
What's the most important word in that entire sentence? Required. Required. Why? Because what's required is changed from what it was just 6 months ago. The sales skills needed 6 months ago, the discipline, how you show up, how you operate, how you speak, how you have confidence, all this has changed from 6 months ago. And so going forward in 2023, doing what's required is a lot different. And it's going to be very painful. Why? Because things have been comfortable. And it's even hard for me, right? I'm having to find myself in this weird place where I'm spending more money than I had before, getting less leads, and it's very uncomfortable. It's not in a comfortable place that you want to be, and it's very fearful because you're making decisions, hoping things work, and understanding that, hey, look, we got to be into this new game that the rules have changed. So we have to start with the foundation. I want you guys to understand everything in 2023 is going to come down to the power of your habits. And really, I want you guys to look at it as intentional habits. Where am I being intentional and where am I being able to double down? Because here's one thing that you want to be successful in 2023, you're going to have to be a psychopath. If you want to be successful in 2023, you're going to be a psychopath. What do you think he means by that? You got to go harder than you ever went before, harder than you ever thought you could, more discipline than you ever thought you could. You can't get away with things you used to because there's scarcity on the table and you have 45% less deals at this moment. You can't get away doing the same things everything else was. What we're in is this place in the marketplace of a contraction. And so as everything contracts, everything gets exposed. There's less leads. The lead cost per lead's doubled almost. And it's a point where you can't spend any more money to get any more leads. And so ideally, it's one of those things that in that contraction, I've got to get that much better to offset that. We've been talking about this for months, but that time is now here. And I want us to be prepared for that going into 2023. And so it's going to come down to the habits, right? And it's going to come down to how you operate as a salesperson. And we're really going to have to make sure we're doubling down on that, and you're going to double down on that when no one's looking. Because that part we talked about of having the discipline to do what's required, that's really when no one's looking. What are you doing in the mornings? What are you doing at nighttime? What are you doing in the daytime? Are you coming to the huddle and going back home and just disappearing? That ain't going to cut it anymore. You could get away with that when the market was in a frenzy because people still wanted to buy some. Now you got to be that much better. And so anyone that really internalizes this and gets that much better going forward is going to really dominate. We're having the trouble across the board though, right? Conversions down on the listing side, conversions down on the buyer side, because we're not making the adjustment fast enough in terms of how we operate. And so I want you guys to say, look, everything's going to have to come from the inside out. Everyone else is expecting things to go the outside in. And so if you want to dominate going into 2023, I need you guys to make sure that you dominate from the inside out versus the outside in. What does that mean, you think? Yes, I need internal power that determines how things operate on the outside, not the outside to determine how things operate on the inside. Does that make sense to you guys? And that's going to be the ultimate hack, so to speak, the way that you operate going forward with that. And so I want you guys to really focus, like you got to figure out the foundation. Okay, and ultimately it starts at the end. Here on this side, which comes down to what my creation is. We'll talk about that in a minute. Creation is what you produce, right, as a producer. But I feel like I was really just kind of thinking and going through this and just kind of asking myself, where are people screwing up the most and how come they can't put the pieces together from a training standpoint, from a learning standpoint, from getting here on the standpoint, right? Got at 8 o'clock this morning, only 2 people here, right? A lot of people still rolling in at 9 o'clock, just got up 30 minutes before that. Like that ain't going to cut it going in 2023. And so there has to be a part of this, and I'm going to have you guys consider one of the most important things that you're going to have to figure out from a habit standpoint. It's going to have to be your bedtime routine. So we talked about that morning routine. I guess you guys talked about that. Most people don't have a bedtime routine. They don't have a specific time. They don't have anything planned out. They're just winging it, and they can't figure out why it's so hard to get in the morning and have an actual process to get things done. That also goes back to why they don't have consistency. And so I'll try to reverse engineer, like they're not having an actual process in a system, not being purposeful in how they operate. And so I want you to understand the bedtime part here in the routine here. How do I nail the habits for the right disciplines to do what's required next year going into 2023? Okay, as I'm sitting there in the fire, and here's a big part. Part of 2023 is going to do you have the ability to stay in the fire when it's going sideways? Do you have the ability to stand there when you're fearful, when you're scared, when things are different, when you're seeing deals are harder to get because you haven't been able to figure out the right combination to unlock the buyer or the seller's mind? You got to be able to stand that fire and figure out what's wrong. And you got to figure out how to control the controllables. One of the most important things you can do is get this right here. I want you guys to understand the bedtime piece here is your absolute foundation. Most people are just living in the matrix of life, and guess what they're doing? Watching some Netflix, whatever it is, just being really indoctrinated and sucked into this world of sedation where they don't have any real patterns or any real purpose in how they operate from a bedtime standpoint. And so I want you to understand, I have to have something here that's part of my foundation that's actually planned. Got to be planned so I can get up the next morning when I plan to get up to get my shit done needs to get done. If they finally fall asleep and they get done watching their third show, binge watching on Netflix, wherever it is, it's not serving them from a money standpoint. Now I want you to ask yourself, is my bedtime routine serving me in terms of money? If I was outside looking in on you, would your bedtime routine really serve you from a place of making money? Most of you, it's going to be a big fat no. And so the first step here is, while this is really the foundation of it, is I got to make sure I have something scheduled here where I'm in the bed doing something the same exact time every night. Why? Because I know my ability to be in power and operate in power is the most crucial part of me hitting these disciplines that need to be done. I've got to make sure I have that plan to have discipline going into Q1 next year. I want you to ask yourself the question, is your current bedtime routine, does it serve your tomorrow? And a lot of people say that same thing, well, I can't sleep, I can't do this, right? That's because you don't have an actual routine. Is my bedtime routine needs to somehow bring me enlightenment? Yeah, am I doing things at night that make me better? Last night, I read the Bible. But your nighttime routine, now if you have trouble falling asleep, guess what you can do that helps you fall asleep? Read a book. Super simple, because that's what leads to the most important part, which is here, which is the morning piece. I guess you guys talked this briefly last week, which is important, but I want to kind of get on that too. My morning routine has one goal. What do you think it is? I mentioned it earlier. Find power. What does that mean, you think? Does it put me into a place of power as a being? In terms of working out, getting up, reading things, putting something in my mind. I'll talk about all those options, but I have to really establish, is my morning routine put me in power versus rolling out 30 minutes before the huddle, jacking up myself on some coffee, and that's going to be exposed when I get into this marketplace that's ultra competitive with less buyers and less sellers. And so it's super important, right? Why do I work out? Put myself in power, both physically and mentally. Okay, put myself under stress, really, intentionally to allow myself to be able to have more power going into it. But I do that because it brings me power in who I am as a being every single morning. It also helps me keep healthy, right, to a certain point to make sure that I can do what? Be in a place of being healthy so I can have the operational ability to do what I need to do. Okay, which I think is super important piece there, right? Second thing it does, anyone have this morning routine so that I can find consistency. This finding consistency is going to be done through the habits, which are going to be your secret weapon in 2023. Why? Because when I don't feel like it, I'm going to lean on my habits to help me push through. Now I get up at 5:30, be at the gym by 6 because I just don't want the feeling of what it feels like when I don't go. Now, I don't necessarily get a high or get anything from it going. I dread it in the beginning, but I know the feeling of me not going because why? I'm leaning on my habit, which already has been doing that for, 4 or 5 plus years. And so it's important for me to understand that I've got to use this piece here to link this to my consistency both in my business and also in how I operate. Why? Because I have the discipline to get up at 5:30 or 6 or whatever it is and execute my morning routine. I'm most likely to have the discipline to get what needs to get done the rest of the day at work. Okay? Super important piece here. I discipline my mind through disciplining my body. Very important piece in terms of that. Third piece of this. It must feed your soul and your mind. You must feed your soul and your mind. What does that mean? With something that's going to make me better. And there's 2 things I feed it for. One's mindset, Other one's skill set. Every morning. Why? Because I know I'm going to be bombarded with negativity, with challenges, with people that are trying to screw me over, with clients who are trying to cancel. All these things are going to happen, so I want to make sure that I'm filling that ATM machine up with money before I need to extract from it. Most people just keep trying to basically withdraw from the ATM. They're not making deposits. And so I want to make my deposits consistently every morning so that I know throughout the day I can withdraw as needed and I have plenty of that money in my bank account in terms of my mindset and skill set. The reason you're feeling burned out a lot of times is because you're not taking the time to fill your mind and your soul in the mornings. Fourth piece of this is I make sure I'm planning to do the right things in the right order. Right things, right order basically means what? I plan my day. Super important piece here. That 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, look at my goals, look at my weekly 4 keys, and one thing, look at my 12-week targets, allows me to really adjust my schedule that day so I can be very purposeful about what I'm doing. If you do the right things in the wrong order, you don't get the right result. If I do the right things in the right order, I do get the right result. And so part of that is me looking and say, look, what needs to happen today for me to win the day? Based on what's happening in the marketplace right now, based on lack of leads, based on what's happening all across the country, how do I make sure I can fine-tune and do the right things in the right order today? Most people, and the average agent, the mediocre agents, they're operating from a place of just reaction. I've done this many a times where I roll in and I just react all day, which means I leave at the end of the day, I don't feel like I really got anything done. Because I'm not really operating from a place of power, I'm not very clear on the right things in right order. Third piece of this, which is important. Going forward in 2023, the absolute most important thing I think for everyone is going to have to be learning. In some cases, it's going to be relearning. Yep, the game has changed entirely. And so if I don't make the right adjustments to really how I talk, how I speak, how I operate, how I follow up, how I text message, how I write emails, all these things are going to have to be really learned or relearned in a much better way. And here's the other problem. The way you did things before is not going to work anymore. And so I can mindlessly keep doing them and hoping it works, or I can have the foresight to understand I might need to change the way I operate and do things a lot different so I get a better result. And so there has to be really an attack on this learning going forward in Q1, both brand new, because the game is harder, and those that have been in the game for a while here, because you have to be obsessed with learning right now going forward. First piece of this, I need to make sure I'm attacking the reading. Why reading, you think? Reading is the easiest, most powerful way to shift your worldview. I didn't understand about success mentality until I started reading books a long time ago. I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. I was really directed to do that in this thing I was in back in the day. And it made me look at how the world operated differently. How I thought things operated was not how they really operated. And you hear this all the time, how you're brought up, or rich people are evil, right? It's hard to make money, the world's out to get me. All these stories that broke people, mostly our parents taught us, was not actually true. And you start reading all these books that make you understand that, hey, look, I can actually get what I want if I just willing to do the work and learn. And so it opened my mind up to how the world is actually not really how I thought it was. It opened my mind up to a different worldview where I saw what's possible. But here's the thing. I can't just change that by listening to someone. I have to actually read and go through this journey through my mind of how things could be and visualize how I grew up as a kid, visualize how these other options are out there and how things are different. I hear it all the time. Well, I don't like to read. Well, that means you don't like to be successful at a high level. I've never met anybody super ultra successful, meaning they make, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars a year that don't like to read. People I look up to. They all read. Imagine that. Second piece here, which is important, is learning through audio. It's different, which is why it's on there. What's important about audio? I can borrow their certainty in the way they speak. I can borrow the way they put words together. I can borrow their tonality. I can borrow their certainty. And so I can use that and model and mimic through my subconscious how that audio comes through and how I internalize that myself. It's the fastest way to borrow certainty. It's the fastest way to duplicate something that works in sales. Why? Because humans in sales are all about flow. So if I flow together back and forth in terms of how we speak and how we text messages and how we go back and forth on a telephone conversation, I'm able to borrow that in terms of certainty for other people, but I want to make sure I'm really hammering this learning right now. Third piece of this. Video. Why does that matter? Mannerisms. Body language, which is super important because most of that communication people have is actually not the words you say. It's how you say them and the body language that you have in terms of how you say it. One of my old coaches used to say that he wanted all our buyer's agents and listing agents to record their actual presentations so they can watch themselves. And we used to do that, which is pretty powerful. We probably should get back doing that. And you can watch how you would actually be able to be fidgeting and twitching and all this stuff, but it's important for you to borrow how people speak and how they talk. So you can say, look, how do I learn from these other people doing video? There's going to be stuff too, like for courses, things that we have that are really powerful that you can utilize to make sure you're able to go in and how they operate. I learned a lot of this from too and how he does that. In the way he pauses, the way that he speaks, the way that he draws things out are very, very powerful to learn from. And you want to be able to do the same exact thing with your clients, your people you're face-to-face with, and how you take them along the journey of either buying or selling with you. Which is a very important piece here. Fourth one, role play. The absolute most powerful thing you can do going forward, how they give you objections on the phone, how you handle objections in your appointments, how you handle somebody canceling on you. It's not very good, and I'm just cringing because you've got to make sure that you're getting good at it. The only way to get good at it is for you to role play over and over and over and over. So listen to your phone calls that you make and go back and re-listen and say, how would I add an objection next time in terms of how I do that? And so these four here, we must double down and attack with intensity going forward in 2023. Some of you guys will take this to heart. I just want you to anchor right now in your mind this conversation today and me telling you this is what has to happen going forward for you to make the adjustments to be able to win in the marketplace. And when it's very painful and it doesn't work, I want you to come back today and say, look, these are those things that are super important and where are you missing out right now? Because here's the thing. Even though you're not getting better right here, guess who is? You can prepare to win or prepare to lose as someone who does. You can prepare to win or you can prepare to lose as someone who does. Meaning that your competition right now is just as hungry. You drive by a lot of these real estate offices early in the morning, late at night, guess what? They're still there. That parking lot's pretty full. On the weekends, the parking lot's full. I look at every single time I drive by on the weekends on most places, and their parking lot's pretty full. Why? But as the market contracts, I have to make sure that I'm getting that much better in terms of how I do it. And that all starts with preparation to win. Very, very important piece in how you do that. Very important piece. Last one here. Creation. What do you think that means? Creation means your ability to produce. How am I creating value to the marketplace going forward in Q1? AK produce. And so most people are going to know what to do. They just avoid what actually they know they need to do. And we all know we need to do it. We just avoid doing it. And so it comes down to when the rubber hits the road, do I actually create, do I produce when it becomes time to produce? Am I doing the extra text messages, reaching out, putting my notes in, all those things that matter really the most, super important. First thing I need to do there, my creation piece, have a schedule. I'm going to stick to the schedule in terms of what I'm doing. And part of that's going to be money making first. I have to get much more efficient in how I operate. Don't have to necessarily work that much more, but I got to get that much more efficient. And so I make sure that my priorities are leading to money-making activities first. If I'm doing my learning, I don't do my learning during business hours. I get up early and I stay up late to do those things, right? And so I got to make sure I understand, look, my creation here, and I can get away. Here's the thing. We can all get away with not doing shit the last 2 years in terms of learning and getting better. Most of us still did, but I'm just telling you, that day and that party's over with. The market is shifting faster than most people can feel what's going on, and they're not aware of what's happening. You have to make sure that you're doing this first, and I focus on making my money during business hours. Schedule is knowing what I need to do each day during that time. Calendar, stick it to my calendar. Meaning I fill my open space up with things that need to get done ahead of time. I'm guilty of this a lot of times, but I don't fill it up with creation stuff. I allow things that are meaningless to go into that piece there, and it's not very helpful. And really the last piece of this is super, super important here, is my 2023 comes down to my ability to execute. My ability to execute, which is super important. This learning piece here, I mentioned that, is my goal here in this learning and relearning is I must become valuable in the current marketplace. Must become valuable in the current marketplace. Consumers don't want facts, they want answers to their questions. Say it again, consumers don't want facts in the marketplace, they want answers to their questions. There's a difference there because they're leaning on you and wanting to understand, are you the best option for me, and help me understand I get the right answer to my questions. It's important for me to understand that, and so I really think the most important piece of the whole thing is the learning and relearning. Most people think they're better than they are at sales. I listen to it all day long, and I'm like, man, I don't know how they even show up to work like that. But everything cannot be different. How you dress, how you show up. Before we get away with just going through the motions, that's not going to happen anymore in 2023. Why is that? 45% decline already. If I stick to my bedtime routine, making sure I'm doing all these things here, right, bringing enlightenment to myself, my morning routine where I'm feeding my soul, my mind, all these things here where I have the discipline and I feel like I'm preparing myself for war, at the same time I'm integrating these learning pieces here to make sure I can be better.